Welcome, Greek U Nation, to episode number 357 of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Ayalon, CEO of Greek University. I'm a speaker and an author. Our third book is out now on Amazon. Go and pick that up. It's called From Letters to Leaders, Leveraging Your Fraternity or Sorority Experience to Land Your Dream Job. It's incredible. Go check it out. We call these episodes the Fraternity Foodie Podcast because there is nothing like great food to bring fraternity and sorority leaders together. Fun fact, even experienced speakers on college campuses will feel imposter syndrome every now and then. And what can you do when you start to feel imposter syndrome? Number one, understand that you're not alone. Number two, 70% of the population has felt imposter syndrome. So it's good to know that other people are feeling that. And I want you to take time to recognize all of the achievements that you've had in your life. Finally, understand that perfection isn't really the goal. Sometimes failure is actually needed for you to grow in life. And that is a lesson that has taken me a long time to figure out. To talk more about this, we have an amazing guest for you on the show today. Described as an industrious thinker, Takeyah Young is a personal and professional leadership consultant and a STEM advocate who operates at the intersection of innovation, leadership, and lifestyle. An engineer and coach by training, project manager and educator in practice, and an entrepreneur at heart, she brings together her technical background, project management, technical writing, STEM influence program management experience, and data-driven analysis to provide solutions in the service of organizational and programmatic sustainability. Essentially, she creates and solves problems typically using technology with a little less pain than organizations would normally expect. While she is not nudging people to take imperfect action in their lives, step up to their gifts, and build business confidence, you can find her rocking colorful vintage dresses, drinking green smoothies, perusing design blogs, rotating her passport, and taking calculated risks, spreadsheets and all. Welcome to the show, Takeyah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Glad to be here, Michael. Thank you so much for having me and welcoming me to the community.
Of course, it's my pleasure. You have so much great information to share with all of our listeners. So I couldn't wait to jump in on all of this conversation. There's so much to talk about here, but I want to start with your undergraduate experience because you decided on Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, which our listeners might not know this. It's actually one of the oldest HBCUs in the entire nation. You chose them for your undergraduate experience. So I'm wondering, why did you decide on Lincoln?
Well, first of all, anyone who meets me will know that Lincoln has my heart. I bleed orange and blue. You know, people say they bleed their school colors. I really bleed orange and blue. Ask anybody, they'll tell you so much that they think I work there. But I chose Lincoln because, you know, Lincoln was established in 1854 as Ashland Institute. And so they have a history of like liberation through education. And I'm all about liberating one's mind. And of course, I didn't think about that as a young student, but as a young person, the thing that stood out for me as it related to Lincoln was that as much as I wanted to be there, I was really good in the sciences. I was always advised to go to these engineering programs. I did that through middle school. And just as much as I wanted to be at Lincoln, Lincoln wanted me. So they were very proactive. They invited me to 2 honors programs. I was able to get my, merit-based aid based on my academic performance. So Lincoln wanted me. And when I visited, it was such a warm environment. It was small, and I wasn't just a number, and that was very evident from the moment I stepped on campus to even now to this day. I'm just not a number. I'm more than that. And it's not the same environment for everybody, right? Some people want that big environment, but Lincoln really offered me the opportunity to just be myself and really grow and nurture all the things that really are important to me. So Lincoln was the greatest.
Yeah,
I
that's
loved it.
really good. I mean, I went to a huge undergraduate school. I went to the University at Buffalo. They have
Oh,
30,000 students on
wow.
campus. And then when I did my master's program, it was much smaller, a campus with maybe 2,000 students. And the difference is just night and day. I mean, totally night and day. So I get what you're saying about just feeling like a number. I definitely felt that at times at the University of Buffalo. And luckily, I met the fraternity, which allowed it to be a much more smaller, intimate vibe within the fraternity. And that I could figure out. But I almost dropped out because it was just a sea of students. And I'm like, where do I fit in all of
Right.
this? You know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think like, the school environment, like I said, it's not for everybody. Some
Yeah.
people prefer to be in that big environment for whatever reason. I've even met people who said they want to go to a big school because they feel like they can kind of fade to the back if they're introverted. So they
Mm.
don't have to be as present. So I think, all environments are good for people when it comes to higher education. It just depends on choosing what works for you. And there's so many great options out there. And that's the great thing. But Lincoln was the best option for me.
Yeah, that makes total sense to me. And of course, you joined Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. What made you want to join them in particular?
Well, you know what? As you can see, I have a thing with being first, right? So Lincoln University is considered the first historically Black university with degree granting in terms of that case. And of course, here I am with Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. So I have a thing with being first, maybe. But more importantly than that, Alpha Kappa Alpha was really about service and community engagement. And not because it's that way on paper. Everyone that I engaged with who was a member of the organization really exhibited that. And in the DC area where I became a member, the community there was just very welcoming. It was always an opportunity to engage and be of service. And so when I began to think about where I want to attach my service and my community engagement to, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated seemed to be a good place for me because I was already engaged. I was a very active community member, and I wanted to really steep that in one community. Not that I'm not active anywhere else, but being a part of an organization that's been around for so long, so many years, they have a history, and I love the fact that they really have systems in place, and they have perpetuity in place, which is a large part of what we pride ourselves in, is being able to have that perpetuity and really extend the legacy. And of course, that's an extension of what I believe in as it relates to what I did at Lincoln. So yeah, that legacy and that service and community engagement is something that I really felt passionate about, and I feel like I could really steep myself there and grow and be a much better community engager.
Yeah, perpetuity. I really like that a lot. And you're right. I mean, the Divine Nine organizations, they've got it going on when we're talking about perpetuity. I mean, heck, we're talking about the White House right now, right? This
Right,
is big deal.
right. You understand?
This is a
Exactly.
big deal. So I get all
Absolutely.
that. Yeah, that makes sense to me.
Absolutely.
And you also got your master's degree in engineering from the University of Maryland in College Park, another beautiful campus, much larger than Lincoln, certainly.
Absolutely.
And now you mentor and you help Black and Brown women in STEM to gain confidence and perspective around success and resilience in their careers, in life, in business. So I'm wondering, why is this your passion and focus? STEM, Black and Brown women to gain confidence. I mean, where's all this coming from?
Well, you know what? It started with because I've always been a confident person in general. I was raised that way. My mother was a computer scientist. So for me, interestingly enough, I didn't grow up with the idea of not seeing the representation at all. My mother was a computer scientist. Her friends were computer scientists. So for me, it was such a normal thing. So I went to school. I matriculated through school in the Caribbean as well as here stateside, and then went to college, went to graduate school. And in graduate schools, when I really noticed, okay, this is something that's pretty unique. And then also afterwards, looking at the statistics and things like that, began to realize that, wait a minute, there's more that needs to be done in this space. And my experience wasn't as normal. But in terms of the mentorship component of it, even though my mother was a computer scientist and our friends were, I actually never had a formal mentor in the STEM spaces at all through middle school, through high school, as well as college, although I was very much involved in engineering programs since then. So for me, I realized that that was another access to capital, social capital, intellectual capital, as well as financial capital that I just didn't have access to. And for me, the social capital aspect of mentorship and building that network is something that's really important overall in general, but definitely for women and definitely in the STEM spaces because, we're not at a lack of genius, right? There's no lack of genius there. It's really just being able to tap into our natural resources and then figure out how can we help ourselves flourish. And so mentoring women around their career, their STEM journey, and making sure that they have the tools and resources to move forward is something that just has been something I've always been personally passionate about and decided to like really launch and make that a part of what I do as a brand.
Wow, that is so cool. And you were even recognized as a change maker by the White House Summit on the United States of Women. That's like a huge honor. I mean, that is no joke. How did that honor come about from the White House?
So, and of course, it happened in the Obama White House, which I'm personally very proud of.
Yeah.
And so, how it came about, actually, I was nominated. I'm not even sure to this day how I was nominated, but at one point for the United States of Women, they had nomination of nominating change makers, innovators, community builders, things like that in your community. And at the time, I lived in Washington, D.C. I mean, people came from all over the country for nominations, but they had a conference and an event, and you were invited to the event. And I was nominated. Of course, once you were nominated, you had to submit your information about who you are, what you do in the community, the work that you've done, and things like that. And they evaluated it, and then they invited you. So
Mhm.
to this day, I still don't know exactly who nominated me, but somebody saw that I was able to be a great contributor and really an innovator and a change maker, and that really is a great honor to me because it's good. It's always good to be recognized by your peers and people who were not even your peers, because of course no one in the White House in terms of leadership is my exact peer.
Mhm.
But it's good to be recognized. So, that's how it came about. I was nominated, I submitted my information, and then I actually went to the conference that they had for all the change makers and nominees. So I was really excited to be there.
Man, that is really cool. But that's hilarious. You don't even know who nominated you.
No
I mean,
idea.
whoever that is, thank you. If you're
Thank
listening
you.
right now, thank you.
Yeah. That's the second time that happened, actually. I was nominated for some other award, and I actually found that I got the award because I have a Google alert set up for my name, and it popped up, and I thought, huh, what is this? And actually someone else I took to this day, I still don't know who that nomination came from as well. But you know what? I try to live my life where my name will always stay above the ground.
Yeah.
So even long after I'm physically here, I hope that people will continue to say positive things. So that's why I continue to live my life on a daily basis to make sure that people will always say positive things attached to my name. So that's a
Yeah.
good thing.
Listen, I get that completely. I think about that all the time. What's going to be left after I'm no longer here, right? And I think about the
Yes.
books, I think about the podcast with 350 episodes. These are all things that people can go and dig up and listen to and hopefully get some additional information, resources, and help to do the good things that we do in our fraternity and sorority, in our business, in our community, all of those things. So I get it. I definitely get it because I think about the same things all the time. And
Mhm.
you speak about developing your leadership equation. Now, as a fraternity member, I love seeing how you're weaving together the values and matching that up with reaching your goals in life. So, in your opinion, why are values so important in reaching your life goals?
Wow. So I'm glad you asked this question. I attach values to belief systems,
Hmm.
and for everybody, it's not they're not attached. But for me, I attach values to belief systems because values allow you to come back to center and can really connect to who you are at your core. And so when it comes to designing one's life, which I'm a big believer in lifestyle design, I believe that core values are great, almost like touch points to allow you to ask yourself the question, does this resonate with who I say I am and how I want to show up in the world, or how I be, right? How I show up in the world. And I think the core value piece is a really important piece because that helps you dial into the expression of who you are as a person. And this core value applies to personal leadership as well as to professional leadership. I do this kind of workshop around it, and I do it in a professional development space as well as in a personal leadership space. Because at the end of the day, it's an expression of who you are. And I will tell people that sometimes that equation changes, right? Sometimes what's important to you as a value might shift and change as you grow. And so I think that's also something that the leadership equation does for people. It lets them know that you could say who you are now and identify particular core values now, but let's say, especially for our college students, let's say they had an amazing internship experience, they've joined an organization, they've been able to grow and change. People have the right to grow and change. And I think the leadership equation allows them to identify those core values, but also express that, you know what, that's not as important to me as I thought it was. And now this is important. But I think the identification of the core value is important. I would even say more, it might even be more important than exactly what the core value is, your identification of it, but also how you can communicate what it means to you. Because adventure could be someone's core value. Let's say between you and I, for me, adventure might be, I don't know, wearing this red lipstick, right? But for you, it might be jumping out of a plane. It doesn't mean that either of us are wrong and our core values are misaligned. It just means that they're different. It's a different expression, and that's okay as well.
Very well said. I like that. The other presentation that you give, I thought was kind of interesting. It's called How to Get Out of Your Rut and Into Action. What should our student listeners be doing if they feel like they are in a rut right now?
Wow. So for scholars, I've been there before. I've been a student many, many, many times. And I think to get out of what, well, first of all, acknowledge it, right? I
Mhm.
think if you find that you're not showing up to class, you're not doing your work, something is just not landing, or maybe you're showing up to class and you're doing the work, you're studying, but you just can't seem to get to the next phase. You can't hit that next goal academically. I think the first thing is first acknowledging the fact that you are having a challenge, because I think presencing that is an important piece. The other part is to dial into what's going on. So in my workshop around this, I have a wheel that looks at things like relationships, spirituality, career, physical activity, and different subsets of life, and really kind of giving yourself an assessment, not to judge yourself, but just to have awareness about the different areas of your life, because sometimes people may think that the area that they're having a challenge in or they're in a rut in, the issue has to be in that area. But let's say, for example, your family is having issues at home and you're on campus, but you can't focus in school. It may not be the class. It may not be your studying. It may be that something's happening in another area of your life that you have to address. So the first thing is acknowledging it. The second thing is taking an assessment of the different areas of your life. And then the third thing is figuring out what areas of support you can get. Who can you talk to? Sometimes it means clinical support therapy, go to your college resource center. It could be talking to a professor. It could be talking to a parent or spiritual leader, just figuring out what resources you have around you and then tapping into those resources to make sure that you get the additional support, because I'm a big believer of support and not doing it alone.
Yep. That's all sounds good to me. Now, you also talk about navigating imposter syndrome. Now, I was just asked to speak in September at a really big institution. They want me to speak in their gymnasium for basketball. There's 12,000 seats in the basketball gymnasium, okay?
Mm.
12,000. And so when something like that happens, do I get imposter syndrome? Absolutely. I'm like, what do 12,000 people want to hear from me of all
Right.
things? So, how
Right.
are we supposed to overcome those feelings of imposter syndrome when they happen?
Well, it's something that people have to navigate a lot. And I think the first thing is, well, there are a couple of things. If it's in the moment, you have to just decide, okay, kind of do some positive self-talk
Mm.
and tell yourself, okay, I didn't get here, I just didn't magically appear here. Like, I took steps to get here. I did some kind of work. My feet moved. I did some kind of action. I did some kind of talking or engagement. So you're not there by accident, right? I'm a big believer that everything's in divine order. So that's the first thing, but that's kind of on a more spiritual side of things.
Mm.
But I think more, strategically, I think first it's important to always document your achievements. Document your achievements and not be afraid to brag. I'm a Google I'm Remarkable leader and trainer. And one of the things in that training that comes about, it's something I've done before, but it talks about just being sure that you acknowledge what you've done and not be afraid to brag about what you've done. So I think something that helps with imposter syndrome is dialing back. If it means you need to read your resume and go back to look at your LinkedIn before you talk, whatever is required. If it means you need to like ask your community what they find valuable about what you do. If it means you need to go back and look at your testimonials, all those things are great. But on your own, I think just continually recognizing that you did not get there by happenstance. You actually did some work, and while you may not be perfect, it's important to recognize that where you are it's divine, and you actually have done some work around it. And I think that's the thing I think initially that will help with imposter syndrome, because I think I just believe that everyone has a gift to offer, and everyone's gift is unique. And sometimes imposter syndrome is steeped in comparing oneself to others. But I often tell people, don't compare your backstory to other people's front story. Right? You have no idea the journey that they've gone through. You have no idea what's behind those Instagram posts. You have no idea what's behind all of this that's presented in front. So don't think that you want what they have, and don't compare yourself to other people. Really, it's kind of cliche, but be your own competition.
Yeah. Great
Yeah.
points in this world of social media. And yeah, I mean, I'm a big believer in reading over those testimonials every once in a while because we all have bad days. So print out those testimonials, put them in your top drawer at your desk, and just if you're having a bad day, pull it out and just read it in somebody else's words talking about your contributions. And I tell you what, there's nothing better. There's absolutely
Hmm.
nothing better than that to get back on track and to make you feel like you belong and that you're here for a reason. And yeah, you've done the work. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting in that chair. You wouldn't be in that
Absolutely.
opportunity. So I like that a lot.
Absolutely.
Now,
Yeah,
I
you have to
also
remember
know
who you are.
yeah, totally. Now, I also know that there's a ton of people that I know that always seem to be chasing perfection. They refuse to take a step in life until everything is absolutely perfect. They're not going to launch their website for their business until it's completely perfect. They're not going to make a social media post until everything is perfect, from the filter to the perfect caption, and the perfect whatever. They're chasing it all the time. So why should folks just take imperfect action?
Listen, I think you're absolutely right. I've been there before with certain things. I don't always take immediate action, but I'm a big believer in taking imperfect action because oftentimes, even if a baby step in the right direction is a good step forward, or no matter when you start, you're going to be starting, right? You could wait 10 years to do something, but whenever you take that first step, it's still going to be the first step. You cannot get rid of the first step. So you take imperfect action is really about committing more to action and less to perfection, because perfection doesn't actually get you anywhere. Action is what gets you places. And that's why I think taking imperfect action is fun, because it may not be perfect, but at least it's a forward movement in some way. Honestly, even if it's a forward movement in the wrong direction, you actually know from experience. I'm a big believer of, like, what did it say? Fail 7 times, get up 8.
Mhm.
The only way to know is to actually do it and move oneself forward. So absolutely, that perfect action is something that's really necessary, because you also may not always have the time, and you actually might miss some opportunities, even though things are in divine order. Sometimes you're trying to perfect it. Meanwhile, the opportunity that was for you has already passed. And the opportunities that was for you might actually might benefit from you being where you were 2 steps before than you were now, right? So I think it's good to just take advantage of what's present for you, and remembering that the action is more important than the perfection.
I think you nailed it that you might miss some opportunities. As a serial entrepreneur, I know that sometimes you have to bring a product or service to market as soon as possible, because if you hesitate because you're chasing perfection, somebody else is going to launch that product or service and is going to take over market share and it's going to be over. So if you have an idea, you need to take action. That's how you get to places, is through action. Our website
Absolutely.
for our company, it's changed a million times. I mean, in the 7 years, 8 years now that we've been in business, it's changed a million times. And so just start, and then you can modify consistently going forward, and you can change course, and you can do all of those things. But if you don't even take that first step, you're going to miss out on so many great opportunities. I'm living proof of that.
Absolutely. I was gonna say, I was gonna say the same thing. I can ask me how I know.
Right. Ask me how I know. It's because I took an action and then that started the snowball effect. But if I didn't take the action and just put something up on the website initially, nobody would have known about me. Nobody would even know that I was offering this service. So I think
Absolutely.
you're dead on with that. I think that's perfect. And, you know, the other thing that you're really good with is time management. So do you have any time management tips for the college student listeners who are listening right now?
Absolutely, absolutely. So we all have, for the most part, the same 168 hours in a week, right? And I think the key thing around time management is recognizing that. So when it comes to, like, the practical side of it, recognize that if you have a certain number of hours within a week to do the work, and you're trying to fit in more hours than you have, sometimes people get overwhelmed. And so it's one way to avoid the overwhelm is to take all of the emotion out of it. And I know emotion is a part of life, and I don't think anything's wrong with emotion. But the more practical side is there are 168 hours in a week. And so what I think is good for people to do, whether it's a scholar, whether it's a entrepreneur, is think about the things that are important to you. So map out how many hours you want to sleep in the week. Map out how many hours it takes you to get dressed. All the things that are essential: getting dressed, eating, relaxing, things like even dating, hanging out with friends, social life, and then school. And really, just like a budget, assigning times and a specific time amount to those assignments and those tasks or those duties, and then mapping it out. So of course, having a master schedule is an important thing. and the master schedule will map out what that would look like if it were a perfect schedule. But the key thing around assigning every task or every opportunity to time is that if something shows up on a weekly basis, on a regular basis, that kind of throws something off, it doesn't just immediately mean that thing doesn't happen. Your map will tell you need to fit it in somewhere else. So let's say, for example, you know that studying, when I was in school, I studied Japanese in school. So I studied Japanese. I always studied Japanese right after Japanese class. But if something came up, it wasn't that I didn't study, then I moved it to another time because I knew I needed that one block. So really assigning a block of time to the task is something I think is the first thing I would do. And then, recognizing that social life is important. That's a really important aspect of school. I went to every single party on my campus my freshman year, and I think I probably had my strongest grades, and I was not doing only freshman level courses. I was deep into my major. So I think the social aspect is a really important aspect of the school. And I think there's nothing wrong with putting that in your schedule. Being college is partially about the academics, but also the extracurriculum, the skills that you get, the friendships you build, all of that is just a huge part of the experience and, the networking. So don't forget that part of the time management as well.
Yeah, so many things to balance there. I mean, certainly I majored in fraternity. I mean, the degree says accounting, but I majored in fraternity, making no mistake about it.
I love it. I love it. I love it.
All right, so this has been a lot of fun. And, we do love great food here at the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. I'm only 4 hours away from Atlanta. It's really not all that far. I live in Nashville. So I need to know the next time that I'm in Atlanta, where should I be going for a great meal?
Wow, well, I eat a plant-based menu. I'm a vegan foodie, which people find to be very odd, but I love it. Been doing it for 24 years. So I
Wow.
would recommend if you came to Atlanta and you wanted to try something that was vegan, I would go to Bar Vegan,
Okay.
which actually was founded by Pinky Cole, Aaron Matson, and Jason Crane. You might know her from Slutty Vegan. She's the one who owns Slutty Vegan. So Bar Vegan is a great place to go. Great food. It's very tasty. There's always a nice environment. If you come on a Friday and Saturday, it's going to be festive.
That's a good way to
The food
put
is
it.
pretty consistent and it's good and it's vegan, which I enjoy.
Nice. Bar vegan. All right. That sounds good to me. That sounds like an amazing place. I'll definitely have to check that out next time I'm in town. So, all right. So, if our listeners, if they enjoyed this, they want to book you to come and speak on their college campus, where should they go to connect with you?
Well, it's a simple conversation to start it off. So you can go to talktotakeyah.com. That's TalkToTakeyah.com. Do not forget the H. The H stands for happy. So I always tell people that. Talktotakeyah.com.
I love it. Talktotakeyah.com. Go and check out the website. And thank you so much for sharing all this great information. This has been a lot of fun. And I know that our students got a lot of information out of it. So thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate being here and thank you for sharing with the audience.
Of course, my pleasure. And to our listening audience, if you enjoyed this talk with Takeyah, make sure that you like it and share it on social media because we can't wait to see you on another episode of the Fraternity Foodie Podcast. Thanks so much for joining us, and we're going to see you next time.